Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about my top 50 overall player rankings for fantasy football in 2021. Inside today's video, I'm going to be talking about every single player I have ranked inside of my top 50 rankings, as well as discussing why I have them ranked at each and every single spot inside of these rankings. These rankings are based upon the PPR format, so if you have questions about half PPR or standard, please make sure to leave them down below in the comment section. My rankings that are available on Osmo.com for free on PPR, half PPR, and standard are going to be updated very, very soon, and will be updated basically every single time there's a big news thing that ends up occurring, whether that is a trade from team to team, an injury, or anything that could occur that could move players up and down my rankings. But before we get on into the breakdown of my top 50 overall players, I'd like to ask, if you are new to the YouTube channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, to please make sure that you hit that subscribe button down below. Not only is it free, I put out this content every single day to help you guys win your 2021 Fantasy Football Championship. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you hit that like button down below to help boost this video up the algorithm so that more beautiful people like yourself can see today's video. Again, just like I said a couple of seconds ago, my rankings are available for free on Osmo.com, and they will be updated relatively soon. So please make sure that you guys check those out. Link down below in the description of those, as well as in the pinned comment down there will also be the link to my articles that I write for free on Osmo.com as well. So we begin at number 1 with Christian McCaffrey, running back of the Carolina Panthers. Now, when it comes to Christian McCaffrey, he is basically the most safe running back I have ever seen in fantasy football. There's a chance that obviously he's probably not going to rush for 2,000 yards like a guy like Derrick Henry can, but it is very plausible that this guy could get 1,000 receiving yards as well as rushing yards on the exact same season. He is probably the only running back in fantasy football that you could easily see having 30 plus PPR points per game. This guy is a safety net for your roster, with the upside of dropping 40 potential points any given week. Even though the Carolina Panthers as a whole have been kind of a dumpster fire of a team, at least as of recently, Christian McCaffrey is still able to elevate himself in these games. To me, it is basically a no-brainer that if you are the number 1 overall pick, you will take Christian McCaffrey, and data will tell you the same, because basically 99.99999% of the time that you go into a draft, Christian McCaffrey is the number 1 overall pick. I just believe the amount of receiving volume this guy could see year in and year out, and that he sees game in and game out, is just so safe to have on your roster, and the upside there is immense for Christian McCaffrey. I don't really see there's a way you can rank anyone ahead of him, if I'm being honest with you, because of how safe he is, as well as how high the ceiling really is for Christian McCaffrey. I would take him 100% of the time as my number 1 overall player off of the board. At number 2, we have Dalvin Cook, running back of the Minnesota Vikings. Now, with Dalvin Cook, there is certainly a lot more risk than there is with Christian McCaffrey, because there is the history of him ending up getting hurt. Basically, every single season of his NFL career has had an injury occur to him. But at the end of the day, despite the injury, when this guy is healthy, he's one of the only running backs in fantasy football that can really contend with Christian McCaffrey on a points per game basis. Now, Dalvin Cook's not going to get 100 plus receptions unless, of course, they change up their whole coaching philosophy in Minnesota, which I highly doubt will happen. But at the end of the day, on rushing volume, as well as that pretty solid receiving floor that he gets week in and week out, Dalvin Cook should be able to finish as the number 2 overall running back. And if he doesn't end up getting hurt and plays a full 17 games this season, he really could end up being the number 1 overall running back for fantasy football in 2021. At number 3, we have Alvin Kamara, running back of the New Orleans Saints. Now, I know there's been a lot of debate between who the New Orleans Saints should end up starting and who people project should be the starting quarterback of the team. I have seen a lot of argument for Taysom Hill, but if I'm being honest with you guys, I think that second preseason game up against the Jacksonville Jaguars from a couple of days ago really put the argument to bed. I have always been standing here, or sitting down, I guess, in this chair, and asserting to you guys that Jameis Winston, famous Jameis, the W Eater, is going to be the starting fucking quarterback of this team, and I've continued to assert it, and after that game, Sean Payton, obviously, he's not going to go out there and tell you who the starting quarterback is. He's not going to be one of those coaches that gives a quote-unquote advantage to the other team by letting them know who the starting quarterback is going to be. But I am about 100% certain that it is going to be Jameis Winston, and that is music to the ears of Alvin Kamara and anyone who wants to draft him in fantasy football. The reason that is because at times Taysom Hill is just going to run the ball in himself, especially in the red zone, and sometimes he's going to rather, instead of dumping the ball off to Alvin Kamara, making the really safe move, he'd rather tap on his own chest and run the fucking ball himself and try to be great. Now again, is Taysom Hill a garbage NFL quarterback? No, he's just about all right, but I think the upside with Jameis Winston as the starting quarterback has Alvin Kamara finishing, at least in my opinion, a lot higher than he would with Taysom Hill. I would be sitting here and telling you that I was really nervous if Taysom Hill was named the starter. Now again, they still have yet to name a starter, but I believe Jameis Winston will be the guy this season, and that really helps boost Alvin Kamara's receiving as well as rushing floor on the season. At number 4, we have Derrick Henry, running back of the Tennessee Titans. Now, Derrick Henry basically has stone hands. He is never going to catch that many passes on a season, and if he did, say they threw him the ball 60 plus times and maybe he reeled in 40 targets, then this guy could actually surpass Christian McCaffrey as the number 1 overall running back, but the odds of that happening is basically zero. I know there has been a lot of talks in previous off seasons, including this offseason, of Derrick Henry working on the jugs machine, that machine that just shoots the ball right at you. He's standing there, he's catching a million passes, but in games, when the ball gets thrown his way, Derrick Henry has butterfingers. He has fucking brick hands. He's not able to ever catch the ball. So, with that said, I still think Derrick Henry is relatively safe regardless of what format you're playing in, PPR, half PPR, or standard, because he is probably the only running back in the NFL that I could see easily smashing 2,000 rushing yards on the season. This team is definitely going to be very good this season with the acquisition of Julio Jones. Even without them having Julio Jones, I would expect Derrick Henry to be really good. But now with them being able to score more points, in my opinion, with Julio Jones, that just gives more opportunity for Derrick Henry to score more touchdowns. At number 5, this is where my rankings start to get a little bit spicy because I know not everyone has Aaron Jones ranked this high. Now, I don't think Aaron Jones is necessarily a polarizing player because even if you don't have him ranked inside of your like top 8, for everyone he is a top 12 running back, and to me he's a top 5 overall player because I believe with Aaron Rodgers back in town, which was not necessarily everyone's assumption, at least in my mind, a lot of people thought, and me included, that maybe he gets traded to the Raiders, maybe he goes to Denver, maybe he just says I hate the Green Bay Packers organization so much that I'm going to go ahead and host Jeopardy, but that didn't end up happening. He is the starting quarterback of this team, and Aaron Jones has put up back-to-back amazing seasons, and yet again, with Aaron Rodgers back there, there's a pretty good chance, there really is a very high chance that Aaron Jones finishes as a top 5 running back for fantasy football in 2021. Now, Aaron Jones is not necessarily Christian McCaffrey or Alvin Kamara in the receiving game for this offense, but he is going to be seeing a decent amount of dump-offs coming his way, and if this offense is as solid as they were last year, or even as good as they were in 2019, Aaron Jones should be able to score a shit ton of touchdowns. A lot of the argument against Aaron Jones from last season was that, oh man, Aaron Jones isn't going to be able to put up similar numbers that he did in 2019 because once he scores less touchdowns, he's screwed. He's not going to be able to get as many fantasy points. And we saw him, guess what? He scored less touchdowns, but he was still just as good in fantasy football. So I believe yet again in 2021, Aaron Jones will be atop of the rankings at the running back position, as well as overall finish on the season. Now, you guys are going to notice inside the top 10, I have a whole lot of running backs ranked here because if I'm being honest with you, when I'm one of the first 7 picks, maybe even 8 picks of the draft, I am looking to go with the running back position. I think that getting that running back early on in your draft is very important. Now, obviously, if you're sitting in the position where you don't like some of these running backs and you're at the 7th overall spot, say you don't love Austin Eckler like I do, say you don't feel that way, maybe you just want to draft a wide receiver. It's all about drafting the best value, but if you're an early pick inside the first round, say top 6 pick, basically every single time, not even basically, every single time you're in that situation, you need to go ahead and gobble up one of those workhorse running backs in the NFL because it is very hard to find one of those in fantasy drafts. Basically, exclusively, they go inside of the first round. At number 6, we have Ezekiel Elliott, running back of the Dallas Cowboys. Now, I know this is a conversation that a lot of people have in my comment section. Who would you draft? If you're sitting there at number 5, is it Aaron Jones or Ezekiel Elliott? Now, my rankings will tell you the story that Aaron Jones is the guy at number 5, but if I'm being honest with you, it is basically splitting hairs between these two running backs. Ezekiel Elliott is on a very good team in the Dallas Cowboys, which I guess technically not a very good team because they weren't last year, but if Dak Prescott is healthy, the assumption is that Ezekiel Elliott will be very, very good. Now, today, Dak Prescott was seen practicing in 11-on-11 football. Will he play in preseason this year? Probably not, right? So if Dak is healthy, which all signs are pointing to for the start of the season, and he's able to stay healthy all season, then Ezekiel Elliott should not be drafted anywhere outside of the top 10 overall picks. And to me, he is my running back number 6, overall pick number 6 off the board. I think that Ezekiel Elliott is going to have a huge bounce back season. It's very, very easy to see because of how good this team was and how much better Zeke was with Dak Prescott under center last season. At number 7, we have running back of the Los Angeles Chargers, Austin Eckler. Now, Austin Eckler's never going to run for 1,000 rushing yards. Maybe he could, right? Because he's one of the only running backs that I feel like could finish with 1,000 rushing yards and 1,000 receiving yards. The other running backs are Alvin Kamara and Christian McCaffrey that I can see doing that. Now, Austin Eckler is not technically a workhorse running back in the NFL because he's not going to be seeing 20 plus rushes a game. And again, this is a conversation I've had in the comment section. What really does quantify being a quote-unquote workhorse running back? To me, it's about getting touches, not necessarily rushes. Touches meaning just touching the football, so rushing or receiving. So technically, in my eyes, Austin Eckler is a workhorse running back because while he's not going to see probably 18 plus touches in any given game rushing the ball, he's probably going to get 18 plus overall touches from the dump offs coming his way from Justin Herbert the pervert. I believe that Austin Eckler is going to be seeing a lot of volume this season, and if the defense is a little bit better this season and are able to stay healthy, which is a huge ask for the Chargers defense because going into every year, we basically project them to be one of the more elite defenses in the NFL, and then things go the opposite way. Everyone ends up getting hurt, so knock on wood, let's hope the Chargers defense can stay healthy. And if that is the case, Eckler will get a lot more rushing opportunity later on in games. At number 8, we have the first wide receiver, or the first non-running back, that is, in Davante Adams, wide receiver of the Green Bay Packers. Now, between Adams, Diggs, and Hill, it's basically splitting hairs. If you told me that at number 8, I should have Stefan Diggs or I should have Tyreke Hill, I'm not even going to have an argument with you. The reason why I have Davante Adams ranked the highest is because with Aaron Rodgers back, Davante Adams just sucks in targets in this offense. This dude should easily be able to have a 30+% target share in the offense as a whole, as well as in the red zone. This guy's a touchdown monster. When healthy, it's very hard to see Davante Adams finishing outside of the top 3 at the wide receiver position. At number 9, we have Travis Kelsey, tight end of the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, one of the biggest advantages in smaller leagues for fantasy football is the tight end advantage because not everyone is going to have an elite tight end even in an 8-10 team league, but everyone's team basically in 8 or 10 team leagues is going to be loaded to the gills with talent. So if you're able to have that advantage at the tight end position where week in and week out, you basically know that your tight end is basically going to outscore the other tight end every single time that the other team has, you have a very big advantage. That's why I have Travis Kelsey ranked here at number 9. Even in a 12-team league, I would definitely take him at the back part of the first round. ESPN's rankings have him ranked as like player overall 5, which I definitely think is a little bit ambitious. When you're up there, you should be looking for the running back position, but Travis Kelsey, it would be kind of hard to see him get dethroned as the number 1 overall tight end. The only tight end I could see doing that is Darren Waller, who we'll be talking about a little bit later. At number 10, we have Stefan Diggs, wide receiver of the Buffalo Bills. Just like with Davante Adams, just like with Tyreke Hill, is the same with Stefan Diggs. They are 3 wide receivers on some of the best offenses, if not maybe the best 3 offenses in the NFL. They all score a million touchdowns. They're all always fucking open, and that basically makes them elite for fantasy football, and they also all command huge target shares in their offense. I didn't really believe in Stefan Diggs last season. I thought it was going to take some time for him and Mr. Josh Allen to get that connection together, and I was blatantly wrong. They were 5G LTE type of deal right off the rip. They had that perfect connection, and Stefan Diggs really helped Josh Allen grow as a quarterback. With a quarterback that can sling the ball 7,000 yards down the field, Stefan Diggs is destined to have a great season, especially if Josh Allen even improves somewhat. But even if he stays the same, Stefan Diggs should be considered a top 10, top 12 pick definitely in every single league. Now on to overall picks 11 through 20. If you guys have ended up enjoying this video thus far, please make sure that you hit that subscribe button down below. I would really appreciate it. Make sure to follow me on Twitter as well, at NotoriousFNTSY. At number 11, we have running back of the New York Football Jets, Saquon Barkley. Now, Saquon Barkley, if there was no concerns about him potentially getting put on load management, a snap count early on in the season, meaning that maybe they won't put him out there for 100% of what Saquon Barkley normally commands in an offense. Maybe he doesn't get as many rushes, maybe not as many receptions early on in the season, or maybe they just sit him out for the first couple of games. Now, to me, that seems more unlikely at this point, but still possible. Joe Judge is a crazy motherfucker like that. He may just do that. But Saquon Barkley is a running back that I could easily see finishing inside of the top 5. But if this offense isn't very good, then I do have some worries about Barkley, especially if they put that load management on him, that snap count on him early on in the season. I still think he should be drafted inside of the first round, but he's definitely probably the most risky first round pick right now. At number 12, we have Tyreke Hill, wide receiver of the Kansas City Chiefs. I've kind of talked about him in that grouping with Tyreke Hill, with Davante Adams, and with Stefan Diggs. Tyreke Hill is in that group, obviously, because I said his name first there. Tyreke Hill, the fastest wide receiver in the NFL, in my opinion, on a team with a quarterback who could also, just like Josh Allen, just like with Aaron Rodgers, sling the ball 7 zillion yards down the field. This is a team that's going to be scoring a whole bunch of points in 2021, so I expect Tyreke Hill to have an elite season again. He's one of the only wide receivers in the NFL that really has true game-breaking potential, where the guy could get 150 yards in a game and 3+ total touchdowns. At number 13, we have Calvin Ridley, wide receiver of the Atlanta Falcons. Now, a lot of these websites, average draft position, basically slap Calvin Ridley forehand, fucking backhand like he's in the Key and Peele sketch, and they push him further back into the second round. I don't get it at all. While Davante Adams, Tyreke Hill, as well as Stefan Diggs are the clear big 3 like Chris Bosh, LeBron, and Dwayne Wade, Calvin Ridley, to me, should be considered in that conversation to be the number 1 overall wide receiver, because I understand that they lost Julio Jones, but Calvin Ridley was basically just as good, just as proficient in fantasy football with Julio Jones or without. I understand Kyle Pitts is there, but I don't think Kyle Pitts will soak up as many targets as a guy like Julio Jones would in this offense. I think Calvin Ridley is going to be peppered with targets. This is a team that throws the ball at a crazy rate, game in and game out, year in and year out. So I think Calvin Ridley is going to be able to have a great season in 2021. At number 14, we have Jonathan Taylor, running back of the Indianapolis Colts. Now, I was originally very worried about Jonathan Taylor after Carson Wentz got hurt and after Quentin Nelson ended up getting hurt, because having a strong offensive line is key to a running back's success. Now, can a running back succeed without a great offensive line? 100%. The next running back we're going to be talking about doesn't have a great offensive line, and I think he's going to be productive, but he also would have had a huge downgrade at quarterback. Now, I'm not here to tell you that Carson Wentz is going to end up having a revitalized career in Indianapolis and is going to start looking like the 2017 Carson Wentz. I believe that was the year when he went off and they won the Super Bowl, obviously, but he ended up getting hurt. 9-inch Nick Foles won them the Super Bowl. I don't expect him to be that guy, but I do think he's a huge step up from Jacob Eason or Sam Ehlinger. And all reports are pointing towards Carson Wentz being good to go for week 1. So if this offense is able to move the ball effectively, Jonathan Taylor is certainly worth pick number 14 in your draft. At number 15, we have DeAndre Hopkins, wide receiver of the Arizona Cardinals. Now, he doesn't necessarily make me all tingly inside like drafting a guy like Calvin Ridley, Tyreke Hill, Davante Adams, or Stefan Diggs, but we know what DeAndre Hopkins is. Regardless of if he's in Houston or in Arizona, this is going to be a guy that scores 7 zillion points year in and year out. He's going to be a top 5 wide receiver regardless of where he goes. And with Kyler Murray at the helm and Cliff Kingsbury as the head coach, I would expect nothing less than a top 5 finish from DeAndre Hopkins. At number 16 is where we get a little bit spicy as well. Najee Harris, running back of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, I understand that this offensive line is bad. I understand that they're going to be a pass-heavy offense, and I've asserted both of those statements many, many times on my channel, but I believe that Najee Harris is going to be seeing a whole lot of receiving volume in this offense that will make up for the fact that maybe later on in the game they're not able to rush the ball as much. Najee has looked really good in preseason, which should be no shocker as he looked so good at Alabama for the last couple of years, so I expect even on a bad team, not a bad team, right? The Steelers are an all-right team, probably a pretty good team, maybe a team that could make the playoffs or make a run inside the playoffs, but they don't have the greatest of offensive line. The offensive line is probably even worse than last year, but I believe Najee Harris could do a lot more with less when compared to James Conner, who really stunk it up last season. At number 17, we have Justin Jefferson, wide receiver of the Minnesota Vikings. In his rookie season, this motherfucker took the league by a storm. And I understand that Kirk Cousins isn't necessarily going to be throwing the ball so many times a game, but Justin Jefferson was still able to get his, while Adam Thielen had a relatively solid season last year, especially scoring a lot of touchdowns last season. So I think Justin Jefferson steps back into a role that he could build upon. I don't necessarily see him finishing as the number 1 overall wide receiver in fantasy football, but he definitely has a chance to be a top 5 guy in 2021. Next up, we have our second tight end off the board, Darren Waller, tight end of the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, if you're waiting on Darren Waller, I would understand it, right? You could take him probably in the 3rd round in some drafts. But if you really want Darren Waller, if you believe, just like me, that Darren Waller could outscore potentially Travis Kelsey because of the fact that this guy is he's clearly the best wide receiver on this team, the best target option in Las Vegas for Derek Carr. You think he's going to be a target monster. You think maybe he scores a bunch of touchdowns and he ends up potentially finishing as the tight end number 1. Then you may want to pull the trigger at the end of the 2nd round. I have him ranked as player number overall 18. At number 19, we have A.J. Brown, wide receiver of the Tennessee Titans. Now, I know a lot of people are a little bit nervous about A.J. Brown because, hey, they brought Julio Jones in, and that's going to really dampen A.J. Brown's value. But in my opinion, that may actually end up helping A.J. Brown because Corey Davis left in the offseason. Now, I'm not saying that Corey Davis fills the void that a guy like Julio Jones would have on this offense, right? Julio Jones is one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, but what I'm saying is, without Corey Davis, man, A.J. Brown was probably going to get triple fucking covered out there because who else is Ryan Tannehill going to throw the ball to reasonably? So now with Julio Jones there, you can't really double A.J. Brown. You can't double Julio Jones. This is going to be an offense that I expect to score so many points. I'm very high on Derrick Henry. We talked about him earlier. A.J. Brown, and we're going to be talking about Julio Jones very, very shortly. Closing in the top 20, we have wide receiver of the LA Chargers, Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen is just one of the safer wide receivers in fantasy football due to the immense amount of target volume this guy sees game in and game out. With Justin Herbert, the pervert, under center, I really heavily believe in the LA Chargers offense. This year, Keenan Allen looked like this whole offense, Eckler, who I'm really high on this year, and Keenan Allen looked like a dumpster fire last season with Tyrod Taylor under center because Tyrod Taylor wasn't taking the shots to feed Keenan Allen. He wasn't dumping it off to Austin Eckler, but now with Justin Herbert, with the first year under his belt looking to improve in his sophomore season, I think Keenan Allen could be very, very nice, as Mr. Borat would say, in 2021. Next up, we have picks 21 through 30. At number 21, we have 9-inch Nicholas Chubb, running back of the Cleveland Browns. Now, I'm definitely lower on Nick Chubb than consensus. I typically see him get picked sometimes even in the 1st round, but most of the time early on in the 2nd round. Now, I don't really have much against Nick Chubb because as a player, this guy, pound for pound, maybe one of the best running backs overall skill set wise in the National Football League. But the issue I have with Nick Chubb is not his skill set, not how he plays, but the team he is on. They're not gonna be giving Nick Chubb some type of workhorse load when they have Kareem Hunt there, and Kareem Hunt is a target monster in this team. He does really does screw over Nick Chubb's receiving work in this offense. So without a lot of receiving work, with the potential to get spelled by Kareem Hunt vultures you, and you probably probably end up finishing as a top 24 player, but not someone I'm definitely not aggressively targeting 9-inch Nicholas Chubb in drafts. At number 22, we have another running back in Antonio Gibson, running back of the Washington football team. Now, Kyle Allen, the backup quarterback, the third string quarterback, I believe he's probably listed behind Taylor Heineke, and Ryan Fitzpatrick is the starter. So Kyle Allen comes out and says, hey, we want to use Antonio Gibson as Christian McCaffrey 2.0, right? He's like the Christian McCaffrey in this offense. Well, that would be awesome. And if he was, he'd be a first-round pick for me. But right now, J.D. McKissic's going to be very involved in that third down role. Now, Antonio Gibson is an excellent pass catcher. Going into the draft, going into last season for the NFL, and going into their, not preseason, right, but going into training camp, Antonio Gibson was in meetings for the running backs and the wide receivers because of how great of hands he has and his skill set that he showed at college. But Ron Rivera still wants to use J.D. McKissic. He still wants to get J.D. McKissic in on third down, and he still continues to want to get the ball in McKissic's hand. McKissic had so many dump-offs thrown his way last season, and to me, that really does hinder Antonio Gibson's upside. If McKissic was to get hurt, then Gibson's easily potentially a top 5 running back week in and week out, but with him healthy, we're not going to project some random injury on McKissic when nothing from the past will tell us that McKissic should end up getting hurt. So I'm going to go ahead and say Antonio Gibson is a top 24 player, but I'm a little bit more cautious than other people. I would say at 23, we have Allen Robinson, wide receiver of the Chicago Bears. For this season and last season, I've been very high on Allen Robinson with Blake Bortles, with Nick Foles, with Kissin' Titties, Mitchell Trubisky. Allen Robinson has been dominant. Quarterback play aside, he's still able to play big in these games. Now, I understand Andy Dalton will probably be the starter. He definitely will be the starter week number 1. How long after that? It's hard to project. I'd say maybe week 4, week 5 of the season. Then Mr. Justin Fields will take over. So even with Andy Dalton under center, I think Allen Robinson can succeed. But after Andy Dalton is yanked out of there, once they put Justin Fields as the starting quarterback, he's a rookie. He's going to feed the best player on the team, Allen Robinson. I think the upside there is immense. I don't see a lot of people really loving on Allen Robinson, and I personally believe he is a really must-draft wide receiver when I see him fall into the third round in some drafts. At number 24, we have Joe Mixon, running back of the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, when it comes to Joe Mixon, I was a huge fan of him going into last season. I was touting him as a potential top 5 finish at the running back position, and that came nowhere close to being true. He ended up getting hurt, didn't look very good in many games aside from one where the man dropped like 35 plus points in that game up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. But now he's healthy. Now there's really no reason to believe he should end up getting hurt again, but there's also no reason to believe in Joe Mixon because while he has all of the talent to be a top 12 fantasy football running back, he has yet to really show it consistently. So I'm a little cautious on Joe Mixon. If you want to be safe, maybe you take Terry McLaurin ahead of him. But my thoughts on Joe Mixon are that he's a really good running back. This team's probably going to pass the ball a lot, but if he's given the passing volume that he really deserves because of how good he is when dumped the ball off, he should be just A-okay in 2021. At number 25, we're at the halfway mark into this video, so if you guys have ended up enjoying thus far, please make sure that you hit that subscribe button down below. At number 25, we have Terry McLaurin, wide receiver of the Washington football team. Now, going into last year, I was beating the drum aggressively for Terry McLaurin. Didn't end up paying off. Now, it wasn't a complete bust pick where you were drafting him, but it wasn't ideal for what you projected for Terry McLaurin. Now, the reason behind that, in my opinion, why he didn't finish as high is because of the quarterback carousel that happened last season. We have Dwayne Haskins, then you see Kyle Allen, you see Alex Smith. You also see Dwayne Haskins play again more at the end of the season. It was very, very confusing. Then eventually, the playoff game up against the Bucs, they used Taylor Heineke. So it was very, very confusing. This year, we have a much safer bet that unless of an injury, Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to be the starter of this team. And I believe that is music to my ears about Terry McLaurin. Because if you guys remember in 2019, for the Miami Dolphins, Ryan Fitzpatrick literally had lock-on missile eyes for Devontae Parker. He was throwing Devontae Parker the ball so often in these games. That's something Ryan Fitzpatrick does. He locks onto a player. In preseason and thus far, he's locked onto a player. And that player's name is Terry McLaurin. That's why I got him here at overall pick 25. At number 26, we have Chris Carson, running back of the Seattle Seahawks. Now, not too many people are as high on Chris Carson as I am because they see this offense as potentially trying to get more pass heavy in 2021. I'm going to go ahead and project the exact opposite. I'm going to stand here and tell you, or sit here and tell you, that Chris Carson is not the best running back in the NFL, right? But he's solid, and he's the clear workhorse in Seattle. They have Rashad Penny, who is yet to pan out, who seems to be, reports out of camp at least, being outplayed by wiki DJ Dallas. So what is there to think about Penny? Nothing. Dallas doesn't worry me at all. Chris Carson is the clear running back one here with receiving upside on an offense that I believe to run the ball a lot more in 2021. Maybe you're against that statement, but even so, even if they are passing the ball a decent amount, Chris Carson is still a solid enough running back as the workhorse running back on the team to have very good value in 2021. At number 27, we have DK Metcalf, wide receiver of the Seattle Seahawks. Now, this is definitely a spicy take because some people have Metcalf literally ranked as a top 5 wide receiver. I have him ranked outside the top 10. Now, I don't hate DK Metcalf. It's kind of the case with Nick Chubb. I was talking about Nick Chubb, and I said, hey, Nick Chubb is a really good running back, right? If you're in a lab, the ideal running back you may somehow create would have part of Nick Chubb's game as a part of that running back. Or maybe you would just clone Nick Chubb to try to make a great running back. You would definitely clone DK Metcalf to try to make an elite wide receiver. The physique of this motherfucker is insane. The speed this guy has for what of a unit this guy is like. He's so big and he's so fast. It's like he's the perfect wide receiver. But, well, I guess not to the Philadelphia Eagles, who passed on him to draft, who did they draft that year? Was it J.J. Arcega-Whiteside? What a great pick that was to you Philadelphia Eagles fans. You really hate to see that. But DK Metcalf, he's good. But I really do believe this team's going to be more run heavy, especially if the defense ends up looking better than it did last season. It looks better like it did down the stretch of last season. They're going to be running the ball a lot more, and Metcalf, in that case, will not be seeing as much volume. At number 28, we have CeeDee's nuts, CeeDee Lamb, wide receiver of the Dallas Cowboys. CeeDee Lamb is probably one of the more hyped up wide receivers of this fantasy football offseason, and for good reason. If Dak Prescott is healthy, which signs are pointing to at least currently, then CeeDee Lamb really does have top 5 wide receiver potential because he's on a team that is ultra pass heavy, and he could be the number 1 target on that team. They're looking to move him more out wide this season, which they didn't do as much last season. And with a healthy Dak, with a bad defense, so they have to throw the ball a lot, CeeDee Lamb could really be unleashed in 2021. At number 29, we have George Kittle me Timbers, tight end of the San Francisco 49ers. Now, I have Darren Waller ranked. Let's go ahead and pull it up again real quick. I have Darren Waller as pick 18. George Kittle as pick 29 because unlike most people, I see a clear gap between these guys. I think Kelsey and Waller could really be in a tier together, or maybe you want to just put it as Kelsey in his own tier, then Waller in his own tier, then Kittle in his own tier. Why do I say that? Because to me, there's some worries with George Kittle. The reason why I'm a little bit concerned about George Kittle is because I'm not too sure how long Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be the quarterback there. And what comes with Jimmy Garoppolo is a lot of safety to George Kittle because Jimmy Garoppolo just feeds the rock to George Kittle. When Trey Lance is under center, how sure are we that they're going to be as pass heavy? They're definitely not going to, in my opinion. They're going to try to run the ball a little bit more. They are already a team that runs the ball at a very high rate. With Trey Lance under center, they're going to want to specialize the offense to his strengths, and that will include running the ball a little bit more, and George Kittle could be screwed in those situations as well because he's going to be out there blocking a lot. So, George Kittle, again, it's not a argument against talent, right? Because George Kittle is arguably maybe the most tight end, not the most tight end in the NFL, right? But the most talented tight end in the NFL. But the situation there is a little bit scary. Plus, the injury history with George Kittle scares me a little bit as well. Closing in the top 30, we have J.K. Dobbins, running back of the Baltimore Ravens. J.K. Dobbins is a very interesting player because in preseason week 2, he got outsnapped as the starter of the team. He was listed as the starter, was outsnapped by Gus Edwards in regular snaps as well as on third down. Not good, right? By Gus Edwards. That's not good. But I don't want to be here and overreact to week number 2 of preseason, right? Because I understand that week 2 of preseason may not mean shit in the outcome of J.K. Dobbins. I believe this is a very run-heavy team in Baltimore yet again in 2021. They have been ever since Lamar took charge of this team. So I think J.K. Dobbins on a very run-heavy team, and J.K. Dobbins, there's been a lot of reports out of camp that maybe he's going to be seeing more receptions this year because he is very good at catching the ball, which I've been talking about all offseason. So I think J.K. Dobbins should be considered to be a third-round pick, but there may be a little bit more risk now with the potential of Gus Edwards having carved out a bigger role than I previously expected. Next up, we have picks 31 through 40. At number 31, we have Robert Woods, wide receiver of the L.A. Rams. Robert Woods throughout his career has been considered a relatively safe wide receiver to be drafting in fantasy football. But now with Matthew Stafford there, I think the upside is even higher this season. I think that Matthew Stafford is really going to help this team be great in 2021, and I expect Robert Woods to have an excellent season as well. At number 32, we have Julio Jones, wide receiver of the Tennessee Titans. Kind of discussed him a little bit earlier with A.J. Brown and with Derrick Henry. You don't trade for Julio Jones if you don't plan on using him, in my opinion. Why would they trade for him if they weren't going to use one of the better wide receivers in the NFL? Last season, I understand that he got hurt, but there's no reason to point towards any injury concern when it comes to Julio Jones. He's not an injury-prone wide receiver. Nothing in his career has shown him that. And last year, there were no signs of him slowing down with old age, so I think he gets right back into it and in Tennessee and could potentially finish as a top 12 wide receiver. At number 33, this is where things start to get spicy as well. James Robinson, running back of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, when to pick James Robinson, to me, is going to be very, very confusing because I made a joke in the video when Travis Etienne got hurt yesterday. Obviously, that's not a joke that Travis Etienne got hurt, but I'm talking about in the video, I was talking about how, hey, you know what? I mean, this is not the best situation for James Robinson technically because I believe Urban Meyer's a bit of an idiot. And he's a bit of a guy that's going to give Carlos Hyde way more usage than he should, and that's going to damper James Robinson's potential value in 2021. Now, not at all inside that video did I say not to draft James Robinson or anything, but what I was asserting was that maybe the extra usage of Carlos Hyde that most coaches with a running back like James Robinson, who's just sitting there, they wouldn't use Carlos Hyde in the extreme amount that I believe, not even an extreme amount, but the same amount as I believe that Urban Meyer will. So again, James Robinson is still going to be a great player, but temper your expectation because there is a chance that James Robinson does get completely fucked over by Carlos Hyde getting more usage than he should. At number 34, we have Clyde Edwards-Hilaire, running back of the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, he did end up getting hurt a couple of days ago. Nothing to super panic about, but obviously not the best to draft a running back who just recently got hurt in your fantasy football drafts. Clyde Edwards-Hilaire, going into last season, everyone was on this guy as a first-round pick, and he was technically a bust. And the reason why he was a bust is because we drafted him inside the first round in his rookie year as an undersized running back who is not going to score very many touchdowns on the goal line. They tried to jam him in there 7 million times up against the Houston Texans in week number 1, the kickoff of the NFL season, and it didn't end up working. So eventually they bring in Le'Veon Bell, and that kind of screws Clyde Edwards-Hilaire out of some touches. But now it appears that Clyde Edwards-Hilaire will be given the chance to be the clear workhorse running back there. Should he be productive? Yes. What's the upside there? Probably a top 10 running back, right? But I do worry a lot about his goal line usage in 2021. At number 35, we have Amari Cooper, wide receiver of the Dallas Cowboys. Amari Cooper does get kind of knocked down a couple of steps after that injury. He is good to go now, though. He should be perfectly fine. But my thoughts are kind of changing. Maybe I'm like, you know what? There's a pretty good chance CeeDee Lamb is the number 1 target on this team. And if that is the case, which I believe it could be the case, then Amari Cooper falls down a little bit. But this is still a very pass-heavy offense. There is still very much a reason to draft Amari Cooper early on in your fantasy drafts. At number 36, another player that I'm very high on. I know a lot of people really like Deontay Johnson. A lot of people are against Deontay Johnson. Now, if you watch my videos, actually, the comment section is all with me because of how long I've been talking up Deontay Johnson. But on other channels, on Twitter, anywhere where you can discuss fantasy football, people are either they love Deontay Johnson or they don't. My stance on it is that Big Ben loves to throw the ball to Deontay Johnson, and Deontay Johnson should be the number 1 target there in Pittsburgh. If Big Ben looks as good as he did in preseason week number 2, if he looks skinnier like he did, if he looks like, hey, maybe the old Big Ben's back and Deontay Johnson isn't dropping passes, then, like, he could easily be a top 12 wide receiver. He really could be because of the amount of volume that he's going to be getting. Volume is very key in fantasy football, and that's why I got Deontay Johnson basically ranked 10 wide receivers ahead of consensus. And you don't have to draft him at pick 36. He'll probably be available at, like, pick 50 in a lot of drafts. After that, at 37, we have David Montgomery, running back of the Chicago Bears. Now, I like David Montgomery a lot. He was running back I was really high on last season, and I continue to spread the same kind of love for David Montgomery, but I'm still worried about once Tyreke Cohen comes back, the receiving volume there is going to definitely dissipate, because last season when Tyreke Cohen was there, he wasn't seeing all that many dump-offs, but once Tyreke Cohen got hurt, then David Montgomery was getting fed dump-offs. He did succeed a lot deep down the stretch of the season up against bad defenses. And that boosted his numbers. I still think he's a good running back. I still think he's in a pretty solid situation. But once Cohen comes back, there's going to be potentially some retraction in his point per game numbers because of the receiving game. 38, we got Pat Mahomes. Nothing really to talk about Mahomes. We know what Patrick Mahomes is. He's really fucking good. He's the best quarterback, in my opinion, in the NFL, and he will be drafted in the second round of some drafts, third round of some drafts, fourth round of some drafts. Other times he'll be drafted inside of the 5th round. So I'm not someone who's going to take him inside like the 2nd, the 3rd, the 4th round, and the 5th round. I'm fine, but I do have to rank him this highly because he has to be in the video, right? He's the best quarterback in the NFL. Number 39, we have Chris Carson, and at number 40, we have his teammate Mike Evans, both wide receivers of obviously the Tampa Bay Buccaneers if they are teammates. So with these guys, I'm not super high on either of these guys. I do have them ranked similar to where the consensus has them going, so I wouldn't say I'm like ultra low on either of these guys, but I think the upside is limited for both of them with Antonio Brown potentially playing all the games. Because with, Antonio Brown there, then they're getting less targets because Antonio Brown does command some part of this offense. So again, Godwin and Evans, they're still going to succeed because this is going to be a good offense led by Tampa Bay Tom Brady, who's going to be good, but I think the upside is limited with both of them by Tampa Bay, or not by Tampa Bay Tom Brady, because they looked really good earlier on in the season, but they're going to be limited by Antonio Brown. Now, 41, we have another quarterback in Josh Allen. He's my clear quarterback number 2, but if you made the argument that this should be Lamar, Kyler, Dak, I'm not going to have any type of an argument. Josh Allen, the quarterback of one of the best teams in the NFL, one of the best offenses in the NFL, so I'm going to like him a lot in fantasy. At number 42, we have Cooper Kupp, wide receiver of the LA Rams. Cooper Kupp is going to be a huge benefactor of Matthew Stafford being there, just like with Robert Woods, who we talked about a little bit earlier. Now, I, for one, am definitely on the standpoint that Woods is better for fantasy than Kupp, because I think Kupp is the clear number 2, and Woods is the clear number 1. I compare this situation to the Detroit Lions in 2019. Why do I do that? Because they both those teams have Matthew Stafford, and Kenny Golladay is Robert Woods. Cooper Kupp is going to be Marvin Jones. Now, you might be thinking, oh, Marvin Jones, that's disrespectful. How is that disrespectful? Because Marvin Jones finished as a top 24 wide receiver that year. So I think Cooper Kupp will easily be able to do that in 2021. And if this team is a pass-heavy attack, like they may be able to be with Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp should be able to eat it up in LA. Next up, we got his teammate, Darrell Henderson, running back of the LA Rams. So he ends up getting hurt. Things seem bad. I am starting to panic because I drafted him like 2 days ago. I'm like, holy fuck. Everything I said about Darrell Henderson, it's all going to come going downhill, right? And then, we get cleared. Oh, it's just a minor injury. He's going to be good to go for week 1. Don't panic. And then today, they trade for Sony Michel. And in my head, right when I saw that headline go across my screen, when Adam Schefter tweeted it or whoever tweeted it and I read it, and I was like, fuck. Man, Darrell Henderson screwed. And then I had an epiphany in my head, and I realized, why are you afraid of Sony Michel? Now, if you want to put him down a couple pegs, then go ahead. Go ahead. But, why would we be worried about Sony Michel? This guy is an injury-riddled running back with a bad knee. So, yes, it's not great that Darrell Henderson got traded there. Or not that Darrell Henderson got traded there. That Sony Michel got traded there. That's not a great thing for Darrell Henderson. But it doesn't have as big of an impact as I think some people will make it out to be. At 44, we have Wiki DJ Moore, wide receiver of the Carolina Panthers. DJ Moore is one of those wide receivers, just like with Julio Jones, who is basically allergic to scoring touchdowns. What does that mean for fantasy? It's going to be hard, except, well, Julio Jones is kind of easy for him to finish top 12. But for Moore, it's hard for him to finish inside the top 12 because of the low amount of touchdowns he's going to score. But he should still be a wide receiver inside the top 20, top 24. So I got him here at 44. 45, we got Adam Thielen, wide receiver of the Minnesota Vikings. Adam Thielen had an all right season last year with Kirk Cousins. I think that a lot of people really blow out of proportion how good of a season he had last year, because at the end of the year he finished well, but it's because he had 14 touchdowns. He had 14 touchdowns. That really elevates your point total. Now, obviously, could he do it again? Definitely, but I wouldn't project him to score 14 touchdowns again. So he definitely falls down the rankings here at 45. At 46, we have the next tight end up here on the board, TJ Hockenson, tight end of the Detroit Lions. I make a similar argument with Hockenson as I do with Darren Waller. TJ Hockenson is the clear best receiving target on the Lions, so he's going to be seeing a lion's share in the target department there in Detroit. I almost just dropped my phone, so it probably looked like I just shit myself a little bit on camera, but I'm not editing that out because that was an elite catch. Call me Odell Beckham Jr. TJ Hockenson looked good last year. I think he's going to look good in 2021 as the number one target in Detroit. At number 47, we have Mike Davis, running back of the Falcons. A lot of people are hating on Mike Davis. Nick, he's so fucking old. Who cares, man? Who cares? He doesn't really have that much tread on the tires. He's never really been that guy. In Carolina last year, he became the guy because of the injury to Christian McCaffrey. He stepped in the role, played really, really good. Also, very good in the receiving game. The clear workhorse back in Atlanta. No reason to have him ranked outside the top 50. At 48, we have Kenny Galladay, Kenny G-Spot, Kenny Bones, wide receiver of the New York Football Giants. Now, he's banged up right now. Not the best, but if he doesn't return to practice relatively soon, then I'm going to sit here. I don't know why I always say that in the videos. I'm going to stand here. I'm never standing. I'm always sitting. And tell you to draft him next week, right? If he's still hurt, then I'm like, oh, shit, we need to panic. But right now, I'm not overly panicked about Kenny Galladay. I think he's going to be fine. While I don't like Daniel Jones, I do believe that he's the clear number one target there. They back it up, the Brinks truck to give this guy one of those, like when you ever see when they win the lottery that they bring out the huge check. That's what they brought out for Kenny Galladay. They're going to feed him the rock. I like Galladay this season. 49, Deandre Swift, running back of the Detroit Lions. I'm definitely way lower on Deandre Swift than the consensus, not because of the talent, but because I believe Jamal Williams will be relatively involved in this offense, which screws over Deandre Swift somewhat in value. Again, it won't make Deandre Swift irrelevant, but it will hurt him a little bit more than I think a lot of people are willing to talk about. But if it doesn't, and I'm wrong, and Jamal Williams kind of sucks this season, then Deandre Swift could easily be a top 12 running back. Closing in the top 50, we have Myles Gaskin, that bitch Carol Gaskin, running back of the Miami Dolphins. A lot of people are quick to dismiss Myles Gaskin after one preseason game. That's why I tell you guys not to overreact to preseason. And then preseason week 2, this guy butt fucks the defense, goes absolutely ham. Who would have known? He's the clear running back one on this team. They will use Malcolm Brown at points. They will use Salvon Ahmed, but I believe Myles Gaskin is the clear number one back here and should be drafted as that, as a potential. He basically finished near as a top 12 running back last year on a per game basis. So he should be potentially considered a top 12 running back in 2021, but no one seems to show him that love. So thank you guys all so much for watching this video. If you did end up enjoying, please make sure that you hit that subscribe button down below. I love each and every single one of you. I hope you guys have a great rest of your guys' day. As always, goodbye.